So when it comes to 3D modeling, uh, the most basic form of geometry that you can make is what we call a sketch. And so basically what a sketch is a 2D image that you're going to eventually extrude in some form or way in order to make that 3D model that you want. And so in order to make a sketch, you can come up here to the top and click on sketch, or you can use the short key Shift S, and then you'll choose one of the planes. It doesn't really matter, it depends on what you are trying to do, but usually you'll want to click on the top plane. That way, when you look on it from the top, this is how you'll view it. The front plane, this is how you view it, and so on and so forth. And then you will, the bar up here will change slightly to some of these other things, your basic types of geometry. You've got your lines. All of these have their own short keys, or most of them have their own short keys that you can learn, and when you get more used to using them, it can make making 3D models ever the more fluid and helpful. And so you've got your lines, and oftentimes you'll just have to click once or twice in order to make your lines. And so what I just did there, as I click Q, that makes this a construction line, which basically means this line doesn't exist. It exists only for your reference and only so you know. So if I want to make rectangle like this, right? And yeah, you see how it becomes shaded? That's because all of these are normal lines that are actual geometry. And then a construction line, if I click this and click construction line again, then it will unshade, because now this line is for your reference only. Construction lines can be super useful in some cases, but you want to be careful on how you use them so that your sketches don't become too messy or unorganized. And then later we've got also your other forms of geometry. You've got circles and ellipses and all that over here, arcs and polygons. And with the polygon feature, this is really nice because you can make it of any size that you want. And then you also have some of these other more complicated ones that are useful in their own different ways. Like this one, it allows you to make a spline feature. If you haven't looked up how the math behind a spline works, it's pretty interesting. But basically, you can use it to make weird little geometry like that. For FRC related things, you'd probably want to stay away from things like that because they're not exactly the most exact. You've also got text features right up here. So if you want to write something like "Yay CAD," then you can also change the font. Unfortunately, you can't upload your own font, so if you want to do that, then you'll have to do some complicated work. But yeah, you've got text, and you can extrude that later if you wanted to. And then there's other features as well. A sketch fillet. I usually try to fill it outside of a sketch just because it makes life easier for me. Keep it organized and see what it is. And also, there's a feature script called fillet all edges, which also makes life a lot easier. And then we've got some other things: trim, extend, split. These are all useful tools that you can use to your disposal, but you really want to focus on the geometry for right now. And then mirror is exactly what it sounds like. In order to mirror something, you'll have a line, and then let's say we just have any old circle over here, and then you'll click on the mirror, and you'll click on the mirror line, and then whatever geometry that you want to mirror will be mirrored to the other side. Similarly, you have the linear pattern or circular pattern, and then we'll get into transform later. Let me get that circle back. With the linear pattern, if you click on this circle, it'll create 3 different reference geometries, and then you can change that amount as you wish. Let's say you want 6 circles or 5, and then you can change this to be like 3 inches apart or even farther, depending on what you need. You double click and change that to 6, and now you have space in between all of your circles as needed. And if you move this one in any way, they will all move together. You can change the size, it'll change them all in the same way as well. The circular pattern is similar in that it will create similar reference geometry, but in a circle around a point. You'll have to make sure that the point is specified. So if you move this and click onto here, now it's gonna that origin, this little black point right here is called the origin, is the part of that's the reference for the origin of the circular pattern. And then similarly, you can change how many you want, how many circles you want or need, depending on what you're looking for. And yeah, so these can be very useful in making sure that you don't have to do things multiple times. You can just copy and paste or move things as needed. Okay, so that's great and all, but how do we make sure that things stay actually constrained? Constraints are these guys up here, and another way of constraining is the dimension tool. And basically, what these allow is that your geometry, whenever you make something such like a line like this, right now I can move it as much as I want, and that's not very useful when you want to create complex features for CADing for FRC. So in order to constrain certain different lines, there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. And if you may have noticed that whenever I clicked on the origin to create a line, this little image at the bottom shows up, and that little thing is called the coincident constraint, and you can create your own using the keyword I, or the keypad letter I. And then when you do that, now at least this endpoint is always connected to the origin. So no matter what I do, it's going to be connected in the origin in some way. However, it's still not fully constrained because, and you can tell that because the line is blue. Once it is black, then it will be fully constrained and you don't have to worry about it. And then you see this constraint, this is called the horizontal constraint, which basically means that this line will remain horizontal no matter what you do to it. And so as you can tell now, this has become black because this part of the line has been constrained. However, this endpoint over here is still blue because the dimension hasn't been established, and you can still move this around if you wanted to. And so we can change that by clicking on D, or clicking on dimension, or clicking D on your keypad and then clicking on the line. And then once you click again, you can change this to be any length that you want. 20 inches is kind of large. If you want to change it to millimeters or the metric system, you just need to go to your settings, and it should be relatively simple to change. Okay, and then we've got more constraints than just that, unfortunately. Some of these you'll see less frequently than others, but some of the important ones, symmetric, that basically is what the mirror uses. Equal is nice. It sets two instances of geometry equal to each other. So if you click E, or if you come up here to equal and you click on them, now they're going to be the same size. And then if I change this one to be a diameter of 2, then the other one will also be a diameter of 2. And let's say parallel. Parallel is pretty self-explanatory. If you remember from your math class what parallel lines are. You'll have two different lines, and then it's Shift B for parallel, or B, excuse me, and then you'll click on the two lines, and then those two lines will be parallel to each other no matter what you do. And then let's say, and then there's also perpendicular, which is Shift L. It's similar to parallel in that it constrains two lines, but it constrains it in a way to where these two lines only intersect one time at this point right here. And then there's also another useful one is tangent. This is the keybind T, and basically what that means is just that this line will only cross this point once. And those are the most useful constraints that I can think of. When you are making things, you always want your entire sketch to be fully constrained. So you don't want something like this where you have something really cool and complex, but it's all interchangeable. And why you don't want this is because any old person can come in and just make one adjustment, and then now your entire design is completely ruined because it was moved around, and it's a hassle to try and fix. So in order to mitigate this, you usually want to have something starting off on the origin, because you know the origin is the initial place of constraint. And then if you want to have something based off of that, then you can, and it usually is no big deal. And make sure you can dimension things as needed. uh and then, yeah, and then once you are done creating your sketch, you go over to the check mark and complete the sketch. And you'll notice that over here in this little features bar, you have a sketch right there, and you can double click it to edit it. And you can adjust it in a couple different ways if you want to. This features bar over here is very useful. It has a folder feature. So let's say if you want to make something for your intake, excuse, that's not how you spell. You want to have something just for your intake, you can have a folder just for that, and then all the things that you put inside there will be for your intake, and this is a great way to stay organized. You can also, of course, rename the sketch itself. So let's just say practice sketch if you wanted to. And then these are your default geometry. If you, these are your planes. You can actually create your own planes if you wanted to. So let's say if I wanted to move this plane, there's a couple of different ways you can do that, but usually you can just offset the plane, let's say like 5 inches away, and now you've got your own plane 5 inches away from the top, the normal top plane. And you can change the name of that plane as well if you wanted to. And then this little guy right here is the rollback bar. So let's say you have this sketch right here, and you have something else that you want to look at later. If you go back, this is basically going back in time and basically takes you back to before you had all these things. And so now they're grayed out, which means that they're still there and they're still saved in memory, but you can't see them right now. And then if you have something like a folder, what you can do is you can click on the rollback bar and put it inside the folder. And then what that means is now everything that you do will be automatically put inside of the folder. And so just remember to take this out whenever you're done working on a specific folder, because it can be kind of annoying to make sure that you stay organized otherwise.